Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Natural Womanhood podcast. I'm your host, Grace Emily Stark, Editor-in-Chief of Natural Womanhood. On today's episode of the podcast, we're doing something a little bit different. I actually have here with me today our CEO, Gerard Mijon. And together, we're going to be talking about what's going on in women's health, not only in the US, but around the world, what we're doing about it, and what everyone, including you, dear listener, can do about it. Today, our CEO Gerard will tell you a little bit more about our vision as a nonprofit organization, what we're doing, the impact of our work, and how we need your financial support now more than ever. You'll also hear from one of our Cycle Mindfulness Club students who will tell us a little bit more about that program, in case you haven't heard of it yet, her experience in it, and why it matters to her. And last but not least, this is the most exciting part of this podcast. We'll be playing clips of some key moments of a talk that pro-woman, pro-life activist Obianuju Ekeocha gave at our annual gala this past September. In this exclusive recording, Obianuju shares how she got involved in her work, what's really going on in women's health in Africa, and how we have to respond. But first, without further ado, Gerard, it's so exciting to have you on the podcast today. You're the CEO of Natural Womanhood, and I can't believe we've never had you on the podcast in all these 3 years we've been running it. So for all of our listeners today who are unfamiliar with you, please give us a little brief introduction of yourself.
Thank you, Grace. It's great to be with you this morning. Great to be with everyone. Very excited to be on the podcast, though it's not something I relish, honestly. So that's why you've not had me so far, and I'm happy to do it though, because it's very important. Now, a little bit about myself. As you mentioned, I'm the CEO, co-founder of Natural Womanhood. As you can hear, also, I'm not from around here, like they say in Texas. You're not from West Texas. I grew up in France and in the eastern part of France, and moved to the U.S. With my wife, who's also from the U.S. in '94. So I'm American now, right?
You are.
Been here 30 years, been in Texas for 24 years. Love it. Now, a lot of people ask, why in the world is a man leading natural womanhood? So it's like, well, because nobody else wants to do it. Now, there's a little more to the story. Actually, my wife and I discovered natural family planning late in our marriage in 2007. And what I discovered there was that couples who had been using these methods from the beginning of their marriage had something really special. There was this communication, this relationship, this intimacy, this trust that I didn't see everywhere. And so I thought, wow, this is a well-kept secret. I wish I had known about it earlier in my marriage. And so it led me to some research and realized that there were some really good organizations teaching natural family planning. The Creighton, Billings, couple-to-couple leagues, Symptom Pro, and so on. So they're good organizations, but there was really a gap, a knowledge gap in the general public, even among Catholics. But this is, we're going to say it, this is originally more of a Catholic methodology. And there was a huge gap, a knowledge gap among women about the scientific value of these methods, the medical value of these methods, and the effectiveness of these methods. So I thought, wow, this is an opportunity. My background, I grew up, I learned business administration, nonprofit management, marketing. So this is, some of the areas I had some gifts and expertise in. And I saw the opportunity, and the idea was, let's start an organization, a movement, a campaign, but it's to raise awareness, to fill this knowledge gap among women and couples about natural family planning. It started with that, but then very quickly I realized it's not just natural family planning. It's women's health in general. It's awareness. Women not knowing about their bodies, young teenagers having these really wrong ideas about who they are and their bodies and their cycle, and then a lot of issues with reproductive health issues like infertility, endometriosis, PCOS are badly treated or have and knowledge about good medicine for that. So anyway, in the short term, that was how I came to be involved and started Natural Womanhood. Now I'm the token guy here, like everybody else. I'm very blessed to have wonderful worker like you, our team members like you and other team members that are women and can speak from experience, because we need women to speak to women. But I'm very happy to be here and so blessed to have been in this journey for the past 12 years.
Yeah, and we're blessed to have you, Gerard. One thing that I just want to point out is, we did start out as an organization being mostly about fertility awareness, mostly about natural family planning, but quickly realized in trying to promote these things that we needed to get women to understand their overall health better. And that's why when we rebranded our website, our organization about a year ago, we realized we've become the online magazine of women's health and fertility awareness. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, not just about contraception, not just about fertility awareness, but the ways that we're talking about women's health on kind of the holistic spectrum at Natural
Right.
Womanhood. So thanks, Gerard, for that introduction. I want to now delve into all of that about what's going on in women's health in our country, around the world. We have been hearing from women this past year, especially about I think one of the things that really stands out are issues with IUDs. And in fact, there was actually a really big Time magazine write-up, I think back in March, a big expose about Black women in particular being fitted with IUDs immediately after delivering babies with little to no prior consent or conversations being had with their physicians. And so they're in this vulnerable place. They're in the OR, having just had a C-section, and having physicians come up to them and say, okay, are we putting an IUD in today? And so what woman in that vulnerable situation, is going to be making thoughtful decisions? And so big expose on that in Time earlier in March. I encourage everybody to read that. Along with another one in the New York Times, they wrote up a bombshell report about the unnecessary C-sections in our country, especially, again, with Black women. And so we're writing about all of these issues. We're keeping our finger on the pulse of all these issues. O-pill is another one. We've been talking a lot about the first over-the-counter hormonal birth control pill. Hit the shelves in March, meaning that any young woman can walk into a Walmart and buy hormonal birth control over the counter with absolutely no oversight. So we're talking, girls as young as 12. And the Biden administration has just this past week had a PR stunt where they were saying they're going to make it free for everyone. O-pill is going to be free for everyone. And, we've got an op-ed coming out in Newsweek next week kind of addressing that. So I'll encourage everyone to look into that. But we are really just trying to stay up to date on all of these things in women's health so that we can keep our listeners better informed, our readers better informed, and so that we can kind of be that salt and that light to everyone around us with the good news about women's health and the things that people need to be paying attention to in women's health that aren't so good, right? And so I, on that front too, want to move into some of the issues, the other big issues that we've been addressing. One of them being copper IUD and the toxicity that is associated with that. So Gerard, why don't you speak a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, and we're speaking about the dark side of women's health, which is there's so many stories, and it's really appalling what's been happening and how it's been covered up. But one story, actually, you and I talked a few weeks ago with a husband of a young woman who died at the age of 42 from the copper IUD, and we'll have more on this story. But there's this copper IUD that's touted as the natural, non-hormonal, and it's all good. And this is actually the copper IUD toxicity article we published, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. Is one of the most read articles we have on our website.
Yeah, it is.
And it's not a surprise, because if you look at data, IUDs are actually used more now than the pill worldwide. So 160 million women use an IUD right now. It's massive. So when you think of all the side effects that can happen from that, another bad guy, that's the one that I think is the worst, is Depo-Provera, the birth control shot. Yeah. Now, also very strongly promoted. Well, there's a study that just came out, back in March, and that was published in the British Medical Journal, the BMJ. where it is studied in France, women who had a brain tumor that had surgery, and compared to women who had another comparative sample, it
Mm-hmm.
was 5 times more likely to have a brain tumor if they were on the Depo-Provera. Five
Yeah.
times more,
Yep.
right? So it's kind of mind-boggling. Plus all the other issues that we know of from Depo-Provera. So this is a really, really dangerous product. And again, how many women in the world? 72 million women are on Depo-Provera.
Yeah.
That's a UN statistics,
Yeah.
right? So it's a really dangerous product. Now that's it. We can speak for the whole hour about birth control side effect. But then another great story that you did, I think, was the on endometriosis. We've had several articles. I think
Yeah.
it's so important because what we see is that endometriosis takes about 10 years, 8 to 10 years to be diagnosed, right? And possibly treated, not always. But you had the podcast with Abigail Anthony,
Yes. Yeah.
uh, this young woman who told her story so powerfully about going through the excruciating pain that she went, going from doctor to doctor who diagnosed different things until finally it came down to endometriosis, and then several years to find the right treatment, which
Yeah.
was surgery, and now she's okay. But it really encouraged people to listen to that story. So again, there's so much to do in this area of women's health.
Yep. Absolutely. And just to take a step back for a second, we we're going to talk about some of the good things too, right? We're talking
Right.
about a lot of bad things right now, but we feel like we have to kind of lay the foundation here first for all of the different issues that we've been talking about lately that are so important because they can get lost in the noise, right? So that's why we're kind of laying out the big issues right now. And I want to turn now from talking about birth control side effects and the issues that we're seeing in that, and with it being used as a band-aid for things like endometriosis and PCOS, to another segment, another part of a woman's life that we've been really paying a lot more attention to in the last few years at Natural Womanhood, and that's in pregnancy and delivery. That has become a real passion of ours to kind of expose some of the, I don't want to say malpractice, but some of the things that are going on in the birth and labor and delivery space that are not at all conducive to physiological birth, that don't respect women's bodies. We've talked about, what a healthy labor and delivery should look like, and what questions women should be asking their doctors if they want to have a respectful, beautiful birth experience. And even prior to that, we're one of the first organizations to really talk about preconception health and infertility in a holistic way, and to give women and couples the truth about IVF, because it was something that folks were so afraid of, especially people who identify as pro-life, who love babies, who were afraid to say anything negative about IVF because, well, this is a good thing, right? We have people who want babies, and we want people to be parents. And so for a very long time, we were one of the only organizations that were telling women, why they might want to consider holistic infertility treatment, where they could get that kind of help, and why it was superior to IVF. We're seeing more and more now people being willing to talk about kind of the dark side of IVF, but we were really at the forefront of that. No one was really talking about that before we were. And so we're seeing even more come out on how dangerous it is, the risks that are associated for moms, for babies, that are born using IVF processes. And so, we have a wealth of information at Natural Womanhood that a lot of other places don't have, and all from an evidence-based standpoint. We just dig into the data. That's all we ever do. We don't grandstand. We don't make necessarily moral arguments, but we'll give you the data and the truth about these things so that women and couples can make informed decisions. And so before
Yeah.
we kind of wrap up this part of the podcast, Gerard, I know you've got one more thing you want to talk about that's been really big on our radar lately.
Yeah, no, what you're saying is so important. Is that the prime? I was talking about a knowledge gap. Is that women don't know where to go, don't know that there are alternatives. It's
Right.
not a moral argument necessarily against IVF. I mean, there are issues, serious issues, and ethical issues definitely. Human issues generally that come with IVF. But then the the big thing is helping people find the solution. That's our approach. We're not judging people. We really want people to know that there are better ways. Another topic that touches to me, I was just astounded when I read the article, is about puberty blockers. All those teenagers that are put on puberty blockers because they choose to become a different sex than they were born, and those the side effects, the risk of these puberty blockers that are again sold as, oh no, this is not going to last long. These are very serious side effects, and then the article speaks about surgery, and I'm like, this is just insane, right? To
Yeah.
have those teenagers who are still forming their they're not sure, they're forming their brain is not completely developed. It's this data anyway. So this was really shocking to me. And then speaking about teenagers, another article that I think was really, really important for our listeners to know about is the impact of contraception on teens, whether they're sexually active or not. Is that data shows, and it's a really powerful study that was done on using the National Family Growth Survey, right? It's a
Hmm.
very established database, and it shows that teen girls who are using contraception are 3 times more likely to have an STD, 3 times more likely to have sexual relationships outside marriage, and 10 times more likely to have an abortion. So there's no causal effect data. It's more like these are the sets, right? The set of girls who are on contraception versus the data set of girls who are not.
Hmm.
So this powerful data.
Yeah, and when George says articles, he's talking about articles on our website at
Yeah.
Natural Womanhood. These are articles that we have written. These are issues that we're passionate about, that we are writing evidence-based, informed articles about, that we want everyone to read, that we want everyone to share, because we want you to know what's going on. And so I promised that it wouldn't all be bad news, and so now I'm really happy to segue into some of the good news that we've seen lately that we are also writing about. More women than ever before are saying no to hormonal birth control, and they're doing it because they're finally understanding the lie that it could regulate their cycle. We're seeing women actually understand, oh no, it's shut down my cycle. We have a great article from an EV writer who now writes for us sometimes, Renee Walton, about how she came to realize after being on birth control for a decade or so, how she hadn't had a real period for a decade that whole time, and just how mind-blowing that was. And so we're seeing women wake up to this and realizing, oh, the issues that I had as a teenager, irregular cycles, acne, that might have all just been normal, and I was medicated for it, and now I don't even know who I am. They're seeing this was used as a Band-Aid for painful cycles, for heavy bleeding, and now they're looking to get real help, and there's just been an explosion, especially on social media, in resources for women to get this information about their bodies, to get real good health care, to assess, to treat the root causes of different issues with their cycles. And it's just so funny because I'm on social media and I follow all these different accounts, and I think in just like the last month I have seen multiple Instagram reels of young women who are impersonating their physicians, pretending like, they're their OBGYN, who just says, oh, you have headaches, birth control. Oh, you have this, birth control. And the thousands of likes and comments on these videos they're disheartening in a sense, but on the flip side of it, they're very encouraging because it shows that women are recognizing that this has been a problem for far too long. And there's a new generation of women who are waking up and saying, not me, not anymore. And especially younger moms, too. We're seeing that they're saying no to birth control after having babies. We have an article this week about with a great quote in it where a mom said, my body was through the ringer with pregnancy and delivery. Why would I want to go on birth control right after that? and women waking up and wanting to do better for their daughters. And we've seen that with our Period Genius program, moms coming to us and saying, I want my daughter to understand her cycle. I'm going to break this cycle of misinformation, of fear around women's bodies and their fertility, and do better by my daughter. So lots of things to be really, really encouraged about out there. And so I want to talk about how natural womanhood is playing a part in all of that, the role that we have taken on in perpetuating the good that's happening in women's health. So Gerard, let's talk a little bit more now about kind of the mission and vision that overarches everything that we do. We've talked a lot about seemingly disparate pieces of women's health now. Let's bring it all back together and talk about the vision and mission of Natural Womanhood.
Great. Thank you. Yes. So I mentioned earlier that we exist to fill a knowledge gap about fertility awareness, women's health, and good women's health in general. So our vision is that all women can learn to claim their natural fertility as beautiful, powerful, and healthy. And there's a lot in that. I don't have time to go into it a lot, but at the root is this idea that the cycle, the fertility is a good thing. You don't need to shut it down. There's ways to really make it flourish. And as women recognize that, I think they will flourish in many ways and personally. The second, you talk about the mission. So our mission is to inform, educate, and empower women to know, understand, and love their bodies, right? And again, there's a lot into that, but we'll go into it.
A whole lot. So what are the ways that we as an organization at Natural Womanhood are, what's the strategy behind all that? Because those are really big asks. So what are we doing to fulfill that vision?
Yeah, so three parts, right? First, inform, and you mentioned it earlier. It's the role of our magazine of women's health, our magazine of fertility awareness and women's health. It's our website. We have the largest and most read platform on these topics on women's health, that is respecting women's dignity. And you already talked about it, and we talked a lot about the different areas from health literacy to fertility awareness and natural family planning to restorative reproductive health and birth or pregnancy, delivery, and postpartum. So really a lot of information and a lot of traffic. Now, the second part is to educate, and that's the role of, you mentioned, Period Genius. So Period Genius is the parent's smart guide to puberty. And so it's a video series that we designed. It's very age appropriate for moms or a parent to teach their daughters about her cycle in a way that is engaging, scientific, but also positive, that it really gives not just the what, but the why in a positive way, that her body is good. Also speaks about the health care and the side, what she can do to stay healthy and what's normal and what's not normal. So there's a lot of information packed in 90 minutes of videos that the mom and the daughter can watch together. And that's the big gift of that. I think the most important gift is that this provides a mom and a daughter a platform, a way to have conversation, breaking the ice. Because what we want ultimately is the daughter not to go on social media to find out about these questions, but to talk to her mom, because that's she can, the person she can trust more. So that's a Period Genius. That's our first online course, if you want, that we produced. We'll have more in the future. Then the last part is empower, and we do that through support groups. So 3 years ago, we launched our first cycle mindfulness clubs, and those are clubs that are peer-led clubs for college campus, college students, university students. And the idea is to engage and teach young women about charting, about the science and goodness of their cycle and their fertility, about good health practices. Again, we're not talking about natural family planning. We're talking about just the science of the body. Mm-hmm. But those young women who go through this program, and it's a weekly meetings on campus, they are transformed. It's really powerful. They start charting. They start understanding and loving caring for their bodies in a very new way, even knowing who they are in a very different way, gaining a lot of confidence. So this is very great. And so we knew that there was also a need among married couples. What happening with married couples, they may learn NFP or not, but they're on their own. There's no conversation about this. It's take care of it yourself, and so there's a big need there. And so we created support group. We just piloted three we call them natural marriage groups, where couples get together, and again, it's the place where there's true support, non-judgmental, but there are real conversations about natural family planning, infertility, issue of contraception, issues of marriage, and in this area.
And so how are we, you talked about a lot of different programs that are pretty new that folks might not have heard of. How are we measuring the impact of this work?
Yeah, and that's very important to me. It's like, if we don't measure or don't have a way to know what's happening, and it's not easy to find out, always know. What we know is that, women who read our content, they get off contraception, they start using natural family planning or fertility awareness. Young girls are have been taught about their bodies. Women find alternatives to good restorative reproductive health methods. So we know that because we know that people go to our page where there are doctors and teachers, right? So we can be confident that we lead women and couples to these good resources. One way for the magazine is the traffic. So last year we had 750,000 unique readers on our website. We have about over 40,000 followers on between our email and social media channels. So this is numbers, but it's good to we're hoping to grow that. Mm-hmm. The other the period genius is not only the number of women moms who have used it, about 300 or more, but it's the comments that we hear from them, and really where they tell us, oh, my daughter is much more confident, my daughter has learned so much, we're able to understand that her changes, or she's able to understand her changes in mood and energy and so on. And then mom also saying, we're finally speaking about it together. This has really opened the door. So that's really powerful for us. And then the Cycle Mindfulness Club, rather than speak about it, actually, we have a little clip I want us to watch. It's a young woman who, her name is Leilani Garza, and she was the club leader. So we trained her, and then she led a club and started a club at UT Austin, University of Texas at Austin. Did a wonderful job. But let's listen to her and what she had to say. She spoke at our gala this past September, and had a wonderful testimonial.
So during my time at the University of Texas at Austin, I find myself in a very dense season of discernment over two important decisions. One was which career to pursue, and the second was whether or not to get engaged to my high school sweetheart. And although I was interested in the medical field, I'd avoided learning anything about a career in women's health because it seemed whenever I tried to, the topic of contraceptives and birth control were all that the specialty had to offer me. I never knew authentic women's health even existed, and so that's when I found natural womanhood. I didn't know charting and cycle awareness were tools that I could have utilized long before even discerning engagement. Honestly, I was really upset that it took me being engaged for me to seek out truths of women's health. So I applied to lead a cycle mindfulness club at UT, so I could help expose single women, women in relationships, any university women who was willing to listen to the biological truths of her body. The cycle mindfulness clubs are college clubs designed to teach women that their cycles are a powerful sign of health and that they deserve to be educated about how their bodies work so that they can embrace their femininity as the true gift that it is. The clubs provide a safe space for women to share their experiences and to support each other in learning the practice of charting. We've heard from so many women about how these clubs have impacted them. They're still charting daily, speaking freely about what they've learned to others that aren't in the club on campus, and continuing to embrace their femininity. I used to expect myself to be the same every day, but now I know it's normal to feel different, and I found peace in embracing how I was made. Because of Natural Womanhood and the Cycle Mindfulness Clubs, I have a strong foundation of my natural fertility and what that might look like as my fiance and I enter into marriage this January. Thank you. I also feel confident in officially pursuing a medical career this spring as I begin physician assistant school. Thank you. Nearly every medical program across the nation is absent of authentic women's health content within their curriculum. And so I'm beyond grateful for the knowledge that the Cycle Mindfulness Clubs have instilled for my future in authentic medicine. Learning about our cycles helps us see our womanhood as a gift. And since learning about my cycle, I now have scientific evidence that proves every woman is individually full of life, full of beauty, and full of strength. Thank you.
Oh, I tell you what, listening to that again, it takes me back to listening to Leilani at the gala, and you could have heard a pin drop. The impact that her testimony made was incredible, and I had never heard her story, had never spoken to her myself, but I felt like I knew her, and I felt like what she had gone through and the role that the Cycle Mindfulness Clubs had played in her formation as a woman, in her formation as a future spouse. I mean, it ended up being a really powerful discernment tool for her in discerning marriage, her career. She did such an excellent job of giving us this very clear picture of what these clubs are doing on college campuses for young women. And it gave everyone in the room so much hope. And I hope you listening to it now feel that too. And so we're going to move into now talking about, we've talked about all these great things that we have going on, our Period Genius program, our Cycle Mindfulness Clubs, natural marriage groups, our online magazine, which grows and grows and grows every year. And I just want to add a quick thing on that too, that we had a physician recently tell us that with the topic library on our website, the way that it has grown, he could see it replacing ACOG, so the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, as a patient resource for him and for his patients. So that's what we're doing. We're becoming the new face of women's health information, and we're so excited for that. But what are our plans for the future, Gerard? How are we going to take this and run with it?
That's a great transition. Actually, the first goal that we have, or the vision for 10 years from now, we'd like to have we have, let's say, about 1 million right now, but we want 10 or 20 million readers on our website, right? Mm-hmm. That's the potential. When we think about today, we have 50% of our readers are outside the US. We're a global organization, so there's a potential to grow to that level with the help of supporters and marketing. But on the other areas as well, like Period Genius, I mean, there's such a need for it. I see in 10 years having 50,000 or more parents using it. The Cycle Mindfulness Club, the Natural Marriage Group, 100 of those could be started in the next 10 years in all over the US and beyond. So that's a big picture, but I think we're really touching on something that's really concrete, right? It's 3 areas, and again, information, education, and empowerment. But let's look at next year, because that's one thing at a time, right? And so doing it next
it's
year,
never one thing at a time with you, Gerard, ever.
Well, it's 20 things at a time. Sorry. Yeah, I tend to be a little bit like that. But I'm trying to make an effort, right? So we want to grow, right? We want to grow. And so in terms of our hope is that we are able to do a large marketing campaign to scale up our reach and our number of people who subscribe to our e-news list. So that's the first goal, is really grow the reach and the engagement. The second area is Period Genius. We want to have at least 600 moms purchase the program and use the program next year. And then the clubs, we have concrete goals to have 25 Cycle Mindfulness Clubs, at least 25 to 30 Cycle Mindfulness Clubs all over the US. Right now we're at Notre Dame, we had at University of Columbia in New York, we are at Franciscan, University of Dallas.
Yeah, we're up to
UT Health Center.
17 already, so we're not far off that 25.
Texas A&M, we have 4 clubs over there. So anyway, we're spreading. So 25 clubs next year. And then the natural marriage group, we only had 3 clubs because we did a pilot this year. And next year, I see that expanding to at least 12 clubs, 12 groups for the natural marriage groups.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see all these different avenues that we have for getting the word out, for empowering couples and young women and moms and daughters all over the country, all over the world, because half our readership on the website is from outside of the United States. So
Right.
we're making a global impact, which now segues me into what I teased at the very beginning of this podcast episode, and what I'm sure a lot of you listening have been waiting for, is to hear, finally, we're here. Finally, we're here. Thank you for listening so far. We had the distinct pleasure of having Obianuju Ekeocha come speak at our recent gala in San Antonio in September. So she flew a long way to come talk to us, and we were so grateful to her for that. Because if you're not familiar with her, Obianuju is a Nigerian biomedical scientist. She's based in the UK, but she's Nigerian by birth. And she's the founder and president of the activist organization Culture of Life Africa. She's really well known for her documentary, Target Africa, and the book of the same name. It exposes the West's ideological colonization of Africa through aggressive contraception and pro-abortion campaigns. She has spoken throughout the world to world leaders. She is just this powerhouse, really, and she's so knowledgeable. She's a scientist. She's a biomedical scientist by training. And so she really can speak to the heart of what's going on in Africa when it comes to these different campaigns that have been coming into the continent and into her own country and others in Africa, and pressing contraception and abortion on African women who by and large don't want it. And so we're going to hear from her now. Again, this is a clip from the speech that she gave during our gala. And in this particular clip, she's going to be telling us, or she did tell us, about how she got involved in this line of work. So I hope you enjoy.
I'm watching TV one day, and as God will have it, I switched on the most unlikely channel that changed my life forever, and that was CNN. Do not switch on CNN. Caught it, I'm just saying. But that day, I was too tired to know what I was surfing through, the channels I was surfing through. And then I came across CNN, and there was somebody who was being interviewed on the program, and I decided, she's talking about Africa, let me listen. And at that time, I didn't even know that there was a bias in media. That's how innocent I was at the time. I thought all news was the same. I didn't know about all of that. This was 2012, back in the innocent days. Name of the person being interviewed, Melinda Gates. You might know her, might have heard of her. But I thought, oh, okay, yeah, they might be doing some interesting project in Africa. I want to listen to know what she was talking about. So she starts to talk about this big project she was doing, and this was a project to meet the unmet need of the African women. I thought, oh, that's interesting. I know a lot of my family members who are in Africa, and there's a lot of unmet need in my village. So let me just increase the volume. And she starts talking about this unmet need, the unmet need. And she was talking about raising $5 billion so that they can meet the unmet need, contraceptives for African women. So she talked about taking contraception into the slums. She talked about getting it to women in every part of society. But more so, she was talking about one particular method that she wanted for it to be her legacy. And this was the self-injectable Depo-Provera method, the Cyana press. And mind you, I have a background of medical science, so I immediately knew what she was talking about. But secondly, I am also a born and bred, like Africa right in my DNA. And so I became really, really angry, because at that point in time, mind you, I had lived in the UK long enough to understand that, of course, the West, there is a lot of beautiful things that I keep wishing would kind of get into into my own local community at home. From the West, you have beautiful schools, you have fantastic medicals, you have wonderful infrastructure, and I'm thinking so many wonderful things that this woman could have been thinking of exposing the Africans to, but rather she was talking about this one project, and she was putting in so much money into achieving her goal. So this really upset me, and I thought this cannot be right. So I did the most logical thing, which was to throw my remote control at the television. Do not try this at home, but it made me quite upset, and I couldn't sleep. So I spent all night trying to write down the reasons from an African perspective why this is actually wrong for our countries, the different African countries that she was targeting. And of course, eventually it became like this 2,000-worded thing that became known as the open letter to Melinda Gates. Got published, it went viral, and everybody started calling me on the phone the next day, like, what did you do? And I thought, I went to bed and I woke up and my life changed forever.
Okay, so full disclosure, this was the very first time I'd ever met Obianuju, and then she got up. I met her, 15 minutes prior to her giving this speech. She gets up, she gives the speech, talks about throwing her remote at the television, and I believe her. Just in that short amount of time, having met her before she, regaled us with this story, you could totally see it. I had a very clear mental image of her just sitting there yelling at Melinda Gates on the TV, throwing her remote at it. Oh, I mean, and I think you felt the same way, right, Gerard?
Oh yeah, yeah. She has so much energy, and you Uju is Uju, right? You're just gonna 100% one person. So, yeah, but what's really interesting, it's really powerful because what happened, how she just started something from just that changed her life is very powerful. But the question is, what happened? It did what Melinda Gates promised and start happen, and it did. And that's a terrible story. But we see, if you look at data, so I have data from 1990, so that was even before, to today, right? The percentage, the growth, the percentage of women on contraception has grown by 10 points, which is a huge number.
Yeah.
Today there are 820 million women on what they call modern contraceptives, which includes condoms and fertility, sterilization, but also 400 million who are on or hormonal contraception or IUDs, right? So all these ways of using contraception that are very risky for women. Just in Africa, if you take Sub-Saharan Africa, right, between 1990 and 2024, the rate of women who are in their fertile age using contraception, these contraceptive methods, has gone from 24% to 56%.
Wow.
That's a huge shift, right? Double the rate. So it's seriously, when Melinda Gates started something, it happened.
Yeah, it did. And it's encouraging. We're going to talk about what's encouraging about the backlash to that we're seeing. But before we can get to the good, we have to delve a little bit more into just how pervasive and insidious it has been that this contraceptive mentality has infiltrated Africa. And that's what we're going to hear Obianuju talk a bit more about in this second clip. And the point that she makes that I want to reiterate before we even play the clip is that we are funding this. Listen to what she tells us in this clip and realize that we in the West, through our tax dollars, are funding all of this and making this possible. So please listen.
Dear friends, I come from a village in the southeastern part of Nigeria. And whereas I know that there are many good organizations and many good people, good-hearted people out there, never once have I heard of a mobile clinic coming through my village for, prenatal care, for example, into these villages. And mind you, these villages, and sometimes they are in locations that are, where you cannot even access the roads and things are difficult. You get the picture, right? And then there's not a lot of hospitals covering people. So you might have to go hours and hours before you even are able to access primary health care. Never once have I heard of mobile clinics coming through these villages at any regularity or with any regularity. But following Melinda Gates' project, we started seeing massive movements to bring in mobile clinics that are just for contraception. So what they do is they carry these jeeps, these big four-wheel drives. They can get into villages that are right at the end of the world. Like if you can think of beyond, out of Africa, if you can just cast your mind to a village, yes, in the bush somewhere, think about it. They cannot even get many of the basic things that people need for even just basic dignity. But they would, it is not an unusual sight for a jeep or a four-wheel drive to come in and then they start giving, they get around and they start giving them, offering them IUDs, Cyanopress, which is a Depo-Provera shot. They will start offering them things like the implant, so the subcutaneous implants. So they come through these villages and they are sharing these contraceptives as mobile clinic. But the thing is, they go to one village and then they don't get to go back to see how the women are getting on. And what we find out is that most times when these mobile clinics come through, they give women these contraceptive methods, mind you, that they cannot remove on their own. They treat them like African women like little pets, I'd say, like little dogs. So you put something into the skin that the woman cannot remove on her own. It's not like a contraceptive pill that she's taking, and if she doesn't feel good about it tomorrow, she can stop. You see what they're choosing? They're choosing methods that she cannot get rid of for 13 or 14, 15, 16 weeks. It's in her body. The IUD, which is right there in her womb, and she cannot remove it without going to hospital. But what if there is no hospital in her local community, which is the situation for most of these women anyway? So we found things like this. There are also cases where we are finding that these projects, they now call them the most oxymoronic, hope that's the right English term, forgive me, English is my second language, but it's the adolescent-friendly family planning. Just think about it for a minute. Adolescent-friendly family planning. So you're offering contraception, but to girls, to children, underage children in the villages. You do know, especially that there are some of these, parts of Africa where perhaps we have problems of child marriage. Instead of going to oppose this child marriage, you go and you sterilize the girls and then you walk away. You are the United Nations. You come there, you give them these, and then you walk away, and these girls are being traded in marriage and things like that. So you are enabling societies to continue the abuse of these girls and women. So they're giving out what they call the adolescent-friendly contraception, adolescent-friendly family planning, and sometimes most times they are going into schools where children are going to school and the parents are at home. These are parents who, it's not like here or the UK where you have the PTA, the parents have to get a note to say, oh, so and so person is coming to give a talk, or we're going to be doing this project, and they send the message home to the children to make sure it's okay with the parents. They treat African parents like they don't have any parental rights. So the children go to school, the parents are waving to them like, goodbye, we hope you go and learn and come and take us out of poverty, but the children get into schools and they are giving them implants in the classrooms in these villages where parents cannot come back and sue, because who are you to sue the United Nations? They also have projects that they call the PPFP. I don't know if any of you have heard about it, but even if you haven't heard about it, but you are paying for it. What do I mean? United States Agency for International Development, USAID, powered by the United States people, paid for by the taxpayers of the United States, which is every single one of you, I suppose, who are sitting here. So the USAID has championed in many parts of Africa this program called the postpartum family planning. What does it mean? A woman has a baby in a labor room in a village in Ethiopia. And while she's still there, in the pangs, just the seconds and minutes after she has had this delivery, somebody then says to her, let's give you something. Let's give you some, like a kind of family planning. She's in pain. Probably has been traumatized. She has had a difficult labor. She is in a hospital that probably has not given her epidural. You just think about this. And somebody just puts an IUD. Many times these women don't even know what has happened to them. And they go home. And there's no checkup, there is no, it's really a world that is far removed from the world that you live in here. The bottom line, dear friends, is that a lot of times the contraceptive movement, the international contraceptive movement, they do their work in a lot of, with a lot of human rights abuse involved. Because never once have I heard that an African woman has successfully been able to bring a case against a government or a pharmaceutical company, or, that we have absolutely no recourse to justice whatsoever. We have no pathway whatsoever to try to even claim that somebody did this or that. But sometimes when we go to these villages, the woman will tell you, oh, they gave me some injection after I had my baby. I was in pain. I didn't know what was going on, and we don't know what has happened.
Well, that is very sad and very impactful, I think, of what is happening. And I think in the West, it's very hard for us to really understand and realize how these things are, what is really happening, right? So if a woman has a contraceptive that causes some side effect and she's not happy with it, she has a pretty easy access to an OBGYN or even a family doctor maybe that can help her switch that prescription.
Yeah.
She has an IUD and serious issues. Again, she can most likely get it removed pretty quickly, and so on, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you live in Africa, you don't have access. So having people come into the village and putting these women on these dangerous drugs is really criminal. I mean, I don't know what else we can say.
Yeah, well, I had invited a couple to our gala who are good friends of me and my husband. And they, prior to coming to the gala, knew almost nothing about natural womanhood, about the work that we do, about, let alone what the state of African women's health is, right? And they were just absolutely floored and blown away by this idea of these mobile clinics coming in, sticking women with IUDs or Nexplanons in their arms or Depo-Provera shots, and then just leaving, never to be seen again. And so women have no recourse for the risks and side effects they might face. They can't even get pregnant again if they want to. It doesn't even have to be that they have, a heart attack because of the hormones they've been pumped with. It doesn't even have to be, as horrific as these things are, these worst case scenarios are. At the very on the less serious side is that a woman just can't get pregnant if she wants to again because she's been stuck with an IUD that she can't get out on her own. And so that really blew my friends away. I think it blew a lot of the folks at the gala away that this is something that's happening and that it's something that Western NGOs, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation being the big one, Planned Parenthood Federation of America being another one, Marie Stopes, which is kind of the UK version of Planned Parenthood. These are the perpetrators of this in places like Africa, and they don't have the infrastructure to deal with it the same way that we do in the West. Do you think it's bad enough in the West that women are dying from strokes from hormonal contraception? And it is, but at least you have a chance that if someone gets to you in time, gets you to a hospital in time, you might not die. Women in Africa don't have that chance in these rural African villages where they're showing up and giving women these drugs and devices and then just bailing.
And it's happening in South America. It's happening in Southeast Asia. So it's the global approach of women's health that is really I would call it anti-women. It's anti-fertility, it's anti-family.
Absolutely.
And it does a lot of harm.
Yep. So, let's let that sit for a minute, let that sink in, that this is what's happening. This is the reality of places outside the United States. And I think Obianuju did a wonderful job of really calling those of us at the gala to being the antidote to this. She made a really powerful point that we're the ones who've supplied the poison. We're the ones who need to supply the antidote. And so what are you doing? What are we doing at Natural Womanhood to supply the antidote to the poison that we've spread all across the world? So that gets us back to, what are we doing? Gerard, what does our work at Natural Womanhood mean to you? What do we want to ask our listeners so that they can help?
I want to come to that, but first I want us to listen to how Uju put it, because it's very powerful, and I was blown away, and I think a lot of our listeners will be, to hear how she understood natural womanhood impact and potential. So let's listen to her.
400 million women on contraceptives. That's a market that will never run dry. Big Pharma has created for themselves a market that they are assured of will keep going on and on unless something changes. So I ask myself, who is going to be able to fight these giants? Because I can't. This is bigger than I am. It's bigger than any one person. But you can. You can bring a change. There is a huge movement. There is a huge international contraception movement that is pushing these pharmaceutical products out. But not only are they pushing it out, they are doing so with impunity. They can see the destruction. They can see the damage. It is lying there right at the very root of this thing that we now see as the sexual revolution. So it's a monster and a giant, but it will only take a very determined movement. And this is my own personal opinion, and I'm hoping that you can confirm that as well. It will take a group of Americans to fight the giants. Because I think that the Americans have the determination that it takes to be able to fight something that has become an absolute monster in the face of everybody. It has taken very determined Americans and very wealthy Americans, actually, to put it out. But it will also take a group of determined Americans to stop it in its track. And that is what I'm hoping that you can do. Now, we come to natural womanhood and the movement they have started. It's not just I want to think about your organization as not just an organization, but an organization that can be the spearhead of a movement. Because how else are you going to fight a movement without another movement in order to oppose it? I wouldn't feel that my work here has been done unless I've actually called you to rise to full stature. Rise to full stature and build this movement. Come into, approach natural womanhood, not just as a good website to go to or a good podcast to listen to, or let's just see the next publication they put out and this project and that project. I need you to stand behind the work of natural womanhood in a way with such force and fervor that you propel it to the kind of growth that the Gates Foundation notice. You have to be the one. You have to be the one. So I hope that I have persuaded you. If I haven't persuaded you, well, pardon me. But I'm going to keep praying that what I've said today would somehow get to take root in your mind and your heart. I don't say it lightly. I say it as a heartfelt appeal. Once again, thank you for being who you are. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Let me just praise you in all your beauty for coming out on a Saturday evening. But I hope that this is one Saturday evening that is going to influence this culture in the next 10 and 20 and 30 years. I'm hoping that somehow that vision, for me, my own vision is an end to sexual revolution, starting from when we're going to uproot that little seed, which is the pill and the artificial contraception. And that can only happen if people like yourselves would rise up and own the movement and completely build up a movement that is formidable enough to bring an end to the sexual revolution. Thank you.
Wow. So I just have to say again, having sat through this talk, listened to this talk in person at the gala in September, I was so struck with Uju's framing of natural womanhood as the spearhead of a movement. I have to confess, I don't know that I have even thought of ourselves that way, in that broad of a global picture of the work that we're doing. But I think she's right. I think that we are at the forefront. We are the leaders of not just an online website, not just giving women information, but an entire movement and it's the movement that it will take to counteract everything that we talked about at the beginning of this episode of the podcast about all the negative things we're seeing in women's health, and to counteract that we've spread it all over the world as members of the West. So Gerard, I want to ask you now, what does our work mean to you?
Wow, that's a big question, but thank you. And I want to add to what you were saying about this is a big responsibility. It's a lot on our shoulder, but we're also I would say walking on the shoulders of other organizations that have come before us, and we're really grateful for that. And we're not alone. And I mean, there's a whole movement, but we do have a key role to play. When I like to ask people I talk to about natural womanhood, when you think of the sexual revolution, you think about contraception, what comes to mind? So Grace, like if I ask you this right now, what comes to mind? And you think of sexual revolution, the harms of the sexual revolution, and contraception, what comes to mind first?
Oh gosh, wow, putting me on the spot here. I guess the heart of it for me is alienating women from their bodies, alienating women from the reality of what it is to be a woman, an embodied soul in this world today. I think, just that alienation that women very, very clearly feel when we look all around us from their own bodies, from their fertility, and how that bleeds out into alienation from men, alienation from our very children. I think in divorcing women from their bodies, that to me is the root of the greatest evil, to my mind, from the seeds that were sown in the sexual revolution.
Wow. Yes. I mean, that is the heart of it, and you put it beautifully. I think a lot of people think about abortion, about sexual promiscuity, about teenage pregnancy, and many more things. But I think what you're saying is really at the heart for women, and for men, it's conversely, it's the alienation from what used to be or was meant to be a very close and intimacy, a very close partnership, to something that is much more difficult. That's something for me that I felt called to do something about. Is this needs healing. And I was talking to a friend a couple of days ago that was telling me how he started with NFP, dropped it was too hard, and then he used contraception, and now the past couple of years they're being back on NFP, and it's healing to them, right? This is huge, beautiful thing, and he says like, this is really important to me. This is actually one of the most important thing in our marriage now is this process that we're going through, healing ourselves, our hearts, and our relationship. through the use of natural family planning. So I think what it means to me, it's like we're not just in the work of education, scientific information. We're working on healing, healing culture, healing families, healing couples,
Healing hearts, right?
and healing hearts.
That's what it comes back to. And yeah, it's so much more than just telling women that birth control is bad for them. We can start that way and they can see the truth in that. But ultimately, yeah, what we're trying to do is to get women to love their bodies again. And we find when women love their bodies, they can love others around them so much better. That's just the truth of it. And so on that note, Gerard, what do you want to ask our listeners today?
I need help. We need help.
We all do. Natural womanhood does.
I mean, we have such a big goal, such a big vision, and a lot of work. And this work doesn't come for free. It's 95% of our income is actually from donation, individual donors, like many of our listeners today. So we really need help. This year we have, we're a small organization with, like I said, a huge impact and a huge vision. But our need is twofold. One is first fund the operation, first the organization. This year alone, we have a $75,000 gap to meet our budget before the end of the year. So I'm going to ask anyone here who's listening to please consider, pray about helping us to meet this big goal. And then beyond that, so everybody thinks about donation at the end of the year, and this is please put us at one, if not your priority, at one of the big priorities, because in your heart how important it is. How much impact you will have with by helping natural womanhood. But looking at next year, what we're looking for is monthly donors, if possible. That and some of you might prefer to be an annual donor. It's great, but monthly donors who give $100, $200, $500 a month. Our monthly need is actually $40,000 just to operate natural womanhood next year. So $40,000 a month is what we need. So you imagine that's a lot of individual donations to put together to continue to operate and produce and do the service, provide the services that we provide. Just to give you an idea, to publish an article, to prepare, edit, review, and publish an article is $500. A podcast is about the same cost, right? To train a psycho-mindfulness leader is $2,000. To train a natural marriage group leader is going to be about the same. So, or couple leader. So we have operating needs for all this, and we are asking if you can help us. We're also looking for larger donors who can help us scale. So operating, producing the services, we have the content, we have the product. Now we also want to scale it. We want not 2,000 readers a day. We want 10,000 readers a day. We want more moms to use the Period Genius. So that's the marketing, and there's no secret, right? Marketing costs money. So we estimate that to really get to the next level, we're going to need $1 million in the next 3 years to get to the next level that we're trying to reach. So
right, because what good is having all of
everyone.
this and no one knowing about it, right? So
I'm sorry.
What good is having all these resources when no one knows about them? So that's huge for us is that marketing piece.
Yes. So thanks everyone for listening, and please pray for us. Pray for how you can be part of it. Contact us. It's simple. You can do naturalwomanhood.org/donate is our online donation platform. And we'll put them in it. You can also, we take stock. We have a way to, if you want to donate stocks, some of you have this ability. You can, pay by check. I mean, anyway, we'll help you. But thank you for your generous heart.
Thank you so much, Gerard, for that. I think it's just so important for our readers to know where we're at as an organization, what it takes to do what we're doing, what it takes to be the spearhead of a movement that's the antidote to the poison. Right. So I'm really glad that we were able to do this podcast episode today, that our listeners were able to hear some of the incredible speakers that we had at our gala. I hope that it is as impactful for you listening as I know it was for everyone in the room back in September. And I hope it moves your heart to understand that what we're doing takes collective action, takes help from everyone, and that you can be part of that today, and that no amount is too small. And as a nonprofit organization, every cent goes back in to what we're doing, all of the good work that we spent this entire podcast talking about today. So thanks again for listening to this episode of the Natural Womanhood Podcast. Thanks again for listening to this episode of the Natural Womanhood Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please drop us a review so other women and couples interested in authentic women's health can more easily find us. Also, please be sure to check us out at naturalwomanhood.org and on our Facebook, Instagram, and X accounts. And if you never want to miss an episode of the Natural Womanhood Podcast or a new Natural Womanhood article, media appearance, or our latest educational content and programming, please be sure to sign up for our newsletter, which can again be found at our website, naturalwomanhood.org. Thanks for sharing a part of your day with us, and we'll see you next time.